This is the story of my stepfather, Jon Miles, a Vietnam vet and well-known community activist in Tucson, Arizona, who has fought for the rights of the downtrodden his entire life, even as he battles cancer. His activism could be traced back to his experiences in the Vietnam War, when he was drafted into an artillery unit from Fort Sill, Oklahoma. After Vietnam, his labor organizing led to representing blue-collar workers in the mining industry. It led to meeting Cesar Chavez, the leader of the Farm Workers Union, and it even led to being investigated by the FBI. I am Ramon Bannister. My intent here is to document what made my stepfather into the type of man he is today. But in many ways, this is a journey into my own life and discovering who I am. Previously on the Jon Miles Series.
So he went across and he lost his footing and he falls in the water. So then, I can't swim, he starts yelling, I can't swim. So I went after him in the water. I went in the water after him and I got him. So I dragged him there to the shore. I got a letter from his mother thanking me for saving his life. And the reason that was kind of fresh on my mind when I just brought it up, like the other day when I had to climb that ladder way up high to rescue Luna, the cat. There was I wasn't going to go up the ladder, but this policewoman, my neighbor, said that she would do it, But she got part of the way up and she couldn't do it. So I got the ladder, had her son extend the ladder a little bit more. So I said, I'll do it, because she came down and she was going to try it again. I could tell she was petrified. So I did it. I wasn't even thinking. I just went up, and I'm up almost 20 feet up in the air. Fortunately, I had this huge ladder, long ladder, extension ladder, that I got up there, and I had no hands holding on the ladder. One hand to grab a hold of the cat, who was at this junction box for the cable and telephones, and then the other hand I had to pry her claws off of the holding on to the pole, and I got that off, and then I got her like this. Then I went down the ladder. I never thought of how dangerous or anything it was. And after that, man, it really got me. How did I do all this stuff, Hell, I'm going to be 78 years old, and I'm going up this ladder like I'm 20 years old, But then it got me thinking when I went after Mitchell, because it was dark. It was dark when I went in that water to get him, but I could hear him, So I got him, and not that the current took him too far downstream either, but it was the same type of feeling that I had after that too, So I thought, wow, and that, just like the other night, I don't know how long it bothered me, but I was under that. But the same thing like the other night after the thing with Luna, I had a hard time getting to sleep. The next day I was still a little tense about it all, what I did, So, that was just didn't happen all the time. And most of the time, you're around, you're cleaning your rifle about 3 times a day. You have to clean your howitzer, you have to keep that oiled and, and keep everything in good shape, and then you got to take care of yourself. We didn't have to shave every day either. You didn't have to shine boots or any stuff like that, There was a lot of, the discipline was still there, but you didn't have all the restrictions you had when you're stateside, where you had to look spick and span. You couldn't grow a beard either, but you'd go for days without shaving, and then you would shave. And the carpenters at Carter, Brown, and Lee, they built a thing for showers. 'Cause before they built that, there's a lot of these wells there, and we had these 55-gallon drums that were cut in half, and I don't know whatever was in those drums, but we would draw water from these wells that they had all over the water level was pretty high there. Then we'd dump it into these 55-gallon drums that were cut in half, and you'd take a bath, you know. And then when finally we negotiated, and I was friends with these guys, two guys from New York, these two typical New York type operators, you know, Mo and the hell was Marchese, Mo and Marchese, an Italian and a Polak, you know. So I would go with them. We'd get a pickup truck, and we had, you know, jungle boots, all kinds of boots we had. So we'd go into this Air Force base to trade, because all the Air Force guys wanted all these jungle boots, you know, the macho thing, you know, Army, you know, looking bad, you know. So we'd go there and we'd have like a big case of all these boots, various sizes. So we traded them for these big, they were like 100-gallon water tanks. We traded them for three of these that were set to, basically made for showers, but we didn't have the hardware to go on them, like the faucets or the shower nozzles. But heck, we made a big coup. We got that, and then it was up to the captain. His name was James J. York, Captain York. Good guy, man, just a good guy. So he was kind of an operator himself too. He wasn't a New Yorker, he was from Nevada. But what it was, he managed to get us dealing with the South Vietnamese, all the shower things, and then the carpenters, we called them, they put all that stuff together, and they built this tank. We got some concrete, built a floor with a drain in it, and then this way they set up the tanks was east to west. It was the 3 tanks, and it might have been more than 100 gallons. I probably think it was more than 100 gallons. But your tank on the west, the water was warm. Tank in the middle, I mean, could be hot almost because the temperature was hot. The tank in the middle was warmer, and then the tank on the east side was cooler water, you know. So if you wanted a hot shower, so man, I mean, it was like being downtown, you know. So this is in our fire base. We made it to where it was real comfortable. It's not like you're in a hole out there in the jungle or hiding behind trees, you know. So our fire base became pretty good. We became friends with the South Vietnamese Army. And you know, they were with their families, their wives and their children living there on that base. And so we'd go to the Arvin compound in the evening when nothing was going on and play volleyball. And I had one buddy of mine, he liked a Vietnamese young woman, but yet he didn't speak Vietnamese. But the father spoke Vietnamese and French, and we had a guy in our outfit that was from Vermont and spoke French. So I'll never forget, we went over there one time, and this guy who was in love with this young woman, you know, the only way to really translate would go that there would be the young woman, the father, the guy that spoke French, and then him, and I was kind of like watching. So this friend would tell the French-speaking guy, what to ask the father, and then the father would translate it from Vietnamese or from French into Vietnamese, and then it would go back like that, and it was kind of hilarious, you know. So finally, you know, I decided I'm going to go play volleyball, and the guy from Vermont decided too, you know. So I don't know whatever happened to that relationship, you know, but I thought it was just an amusing thing that happened. You know, they were regular people, but one thing about the Arvin Army, they were selling drugs, selling pornography, you know, and the drugs, anything from marijuana to hard drugs, you know, coming around, you know. So there's always leeries of them, and even some of them are going around trying to sell their wives, you know, or girlfriends, whatever, you know. So it was always a battle with them, you know, because then a lot of our guys would go there to get drugs or whatever, you know. So we'd go over there and play some volleyball, you know, so we had this relationship with them, and we were basically supporting them when they were out in the field. They were infantry. They had, you know, construction. They had heavy equipment when we were building our area there. They came out and would do things. They were bringing truckloads of that sand in for us, which I used to hate, you know. If I had $100 bill for every sandbag I filled and lugged, I mean, I'd be a millionaire, you know. It seemed like that, you know. And I have some photos, if I can find them, of the bunkers, especially of the bunkers, you know. And you can see how many sandbags we used on them, you know. Just incredible. Even our tents where we slept on, you know, cots. And we had mosquito netting. We had a frame and then mosquito netting. We slept on the cots. And of course the cots are 6-foot cots. Well, I'm 6'6". So, I mean, I managed to survive. And when you go in there to sleep, you had the nice tent for the squad tent, you know, and you had maybe 10 guys in there, you know. There was plenty of room, but then you'd get in, you have your insect repellent, you'd spray inside your mosquito netting before you get in case any mosquitoes got in during the day. So you were relatively mosquito free. On the bunkers, it was a different story. In the bunkers, mosquitoes drive you crazy, but you go up on the bunker, on the top of the bunkers, the mosquitoes didn't go up high. For some reason, they didn't bother you after 6 or 8 feet in the air. So needless to say, at nighttime it'd be hot in those bunkers, so everybody'd wind up on the top if there was nothing happening. Actually, that location was a permanent location, but what happened, being that we were towed howitzers, we had these 2.5 trunks, and we could close the trails on those howitzers, hook them up on the hitch on the back, and we could take off down the road, which we did. And that's where I got exposed to the Agent Orange. We went on. There were a couple of interesting things. One thing that happened too that gave me a lot of second thoughts about what the hell we were doing over there in Vietnam. We had 2 guns going out, and I was in the first gun, and all of a sudden we got what they call a hip shoot, where, you know, they need our help, so you just pull off the side of the road and you set up your gun, and you gotta lay the gun. You gotta put out your stakes out there because you have to zero in on everything. And we pulled it right. The only place to go was this big agricultural field where they were growing all kinds of crops there. You know, like basically, you know, what would you call like a truck farm crops? They had tomatoes and all this kind of. This truck just drove right in this field, and they had to drive in and go around because you had to position the gun whichever direction, you know, that the forward observers wanted it. So we went in there, and there was a lot of people out there in the fields, the workers, the Vietnamese. They were not happy about it at all. So I had a crew of guys. My job, I wasn't going to be manning the gun, but my job was with these 3 other guys to go round up all the people, the women, the kids, the old men, round them all up and get them away from there and make sure they had no weapons, you know, and then just keep them secure. So, which we did, and they were not happy at all. And so we kept them, and it's funny, you know, that they have a lot of oxen, water buffalo, and what they do with the manure, the crap, you know, they pile it up in big piles because they use it for fertilizer later on. So we took them over. There's one area because it's a cleared area. We took them over to that, and just weren't pointing rifles at them. Just they saw they weren't going to do anything. So then we had like a guy, we called him Kit Carson. I guess every outfit had a Kit Carson. I guess assumed because the name wasn't unique to our guy, but he was a Vietnamese that spoke a little bit of English. So he came over and he talked to the head old man, and it's really, they really have a respectful hierarchy over there. You know, the younger people really respect the older people. So this old man, they called him Papa San. So this Kit Carson comes over, and he starts talking to this guy, and the guy back talks. So Vietnamese, they're pretty good with their feet, you know. So they start kicking this guy in the face, knocking him down and kicking him. So I just stepped right in there. Hey, quit this crap, you know. So the Vietnamese, Kit Carson says, why? I said, you know, we're supposed to be guarding these people. You're going to piss them off even more. If somebody's out there in the jungle watching this stuff that's going on, they're going to be shooting us, man. You just get the hell out of here, you know. So I ran him off, you know. I mean, I was really, and he was cursing at me, I guess, in Vietnamese, and he left. Like he was going to tell the lieutenant. I said, tell him, you're jeopardizing me and these 3 other guys' lives too, you know. So he took off. So I carried in my pocket, I had this book, English Vietnamese. So I mean, I could see kind of a change in their temperament. These people we were held prisoner. So then I got out my book and I, you know, Chaong, you know, and tried to talk, and he didn't really say anything. So then I just went to the woman, Chao Ba, and then she said Chaong back to me and trying to talk and say a few words. So it never really, but, you know, I tried to be relational in a way, because I knew, you know, I'm looking out for us, you know, because somebody could be out there in the edge of the village or in the jungle somewhere, and they could be shooting at you, take a pot shot at you, you know. So after a while, we fired, I don't know how many rounds were fired. So after a while, the lieutenant comes back, you know, with a Kit Carson. I figured, okay, I'm going to hear it from this guy, you know. He came back, and so right away, the Kit Carson starts talking to Papa San, and the lieutenant had a stack of piastres, and piastres was like Vietnamese money. They call them, you know, yeah, I guess piastres. So he had a stack of brand new piastres, and I don't know what nomination they were, what number, how much it was, but the translation was, I heard the lieutenant say, well, no, we're sorry for damaging your field, and we want to, you know, pay you for your losses and blah, blah, blah. So the old man, so he gave the money to the old man, and it was like in one big stack, like about like that thick, and the old man just took it and threw it right back in the lieutenant's face. I laughed, you know. I kind of laughed. So then they left. So then we had to wait. Still had to keep an eye on him till the lieutenant and the Kit Carson left. And then when they got the gun back hooked up again and got back on the road, we left. And as I left, I looked at the old man, and he kind of gave me a nod like that. So I felt, oh, all right, you know. So that really got me to thinking, you know. I mean, how are these people, we're going over there and we're being like animals, you know. And we were, you know, on payday. We got paid once a month, and we didn't get paid in American dollars. We got paid in military payment certificates. We called them script, you know. So we got paid. So there were a lot of bars, these whorehouses and all that stuff. So, you know, like if we got paid in the afternoon, I mean, there was a curfew too. We had to be in by dark usually, no later than 7:30. So guys would go out there and just get crazy and tear up some of these places. There was one thing where there was this house of ill repute, and these guys, you know, I went with them. We went out there in this truck, and they were closed because it was getting later in the day, you know. So these guys had been drinking, and unfortunately it was all, well, I shouldn't say it, but the guys, and they started just carrying on, just tearing the place apart, started, you know, propositioning any woman they saw, you know, for sex or whatever, you know, and it was just really an embarrassment. We'd go by this little area where people are waiting for a bus, and they all squat down, and these guys going around there offering them $10 for this or that, you know.
$5 is all my mom allows me to spend. Okay, $10 each. What do we get for $10?
Everything you want.
Everything?
Everything. You keep playing.
Well, old buddy.
Playing.
Feel like spending some of your hard-earned money?
And you keep thinking that...
Just pretty much disgusted me, you know, that what was going on, you know. So, you know, and stuff like that, I'm sure happened a lot, you know. But then on the other hand, then you had some guys that in the little villages around there wound up with girlfriends and people they'd stay with overnight, you know, and you'd have to cover for them, you know, because you weren't allowed to be out there. But if they didn't have any any guard duty or anything to do. They just say, hey, Miles, I'm going to be staying in Sue Lynn's house, and I'll be back after curfew is lifted in the morning. Because we didn't have a big official gate to come in, you know. You know, it was the Arvin people ran the gate. So if a GI came in, they said anything, well, I was on patrol and got lost or something, you know. They never had a problem doing it, you know. And then on the other hand, sometimes when we had the farm, the people coming in when they were still harvesting the crops, some of these women would stay in some of these bunkers overnight, you know. So that wasn't really it didn't happen with our guys, but I heard stories that happened to other places, you know. So just stuff like that. So it was a different war back then than what they had to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan because of the morals of the country, you know. I mean, not even any liquor or anything there, you know. So so the troops over there got pretty wild. Even, as a matter of fact, there was this place called the Sherwood Forest. It was an old Michelin rubber plantation that all the trees died, and there was this big area inside. They made it into basically a giant whorehouse, a great big house of ill repute. And all the prostitutes and all the people that worked in there, they had a big bar in there. They had all these cribs where the women would operate out of, and they had guards outside. They had these walls that had to be, I mean, they must have been 10 or 12 feet high with all these shards of glass up on top. They had Vietnamese guards letting you in, and it was run by the Army, U.S. Army. It was a lot of these higher-ranking sergeants and people were basically running the whole operation, you know. It was called the Sherwood Forest. So it was pretty incredible, you know. And so, I mean, so it's when people say, well, war stories, I mean, there's a whole lot more went on than war stories, you know, over there. And there were some times when it got pretty hairy. It wasn't like you got a frontier and then you move here and here. You stayed in this one spot and you'd go out, because there was a big buildup of American troops. We secured this area, then they'd bring in another group, secure another area. They're going to Vietnamization. They were going to take over the country and turn it over to the Vietnamese, which never happened. No, the other time when I mentioned too, when we went on a hip shoot, went out, we'd go out, and I don't know where the area was, but it was a pre-designated area we'd go to. We'd go out there, we'd have a couple of gun crews again, we'd go out there, and we'd set up out there. And I took some photos out there. You can't always carry a camera around with you, you know, and take pictures when a lot of times I thought, man, I wish I had my camera. But this time I had my camera and went out there, and this area was completely brown. It wasn't defoliated. The leaves were still on the trees, but they were all dead. It was all brown. Nothing, you know. The only thing of any color, because this area had been used before for the artillery. We'd go out there every once in a while, not only us, but other batteries and other gun crews. And there was a big black bladder, water bladder, where they kept drinking water in. So we would set up out there, but we didn't set up any tents, and it was pretty much the dry season. It was mostly dust. So we'd stay out there for days at a time, and the area was pretty well secured. They had wire, they had all these trip flares, they had, one thing I took a photo of too, they had these 55 gallon barrels that had napalm in them, and they had a device that would set the napalm off, and they were on an angle, so that if anybody was attacking us, you light that napalm, and that napalm would shoot out and burn everything around there. So they had these barrels all around, plus the wire, plus trip flares. I mean, it was so devoid of any vegetation, you couldn't see, you could see for quite a distance. So we never had any incoming fire or anything for that. But the thing was, every time you pull that lanyard on the howitzer, I mean, the dust kicks up, you know. and then you're sleeping there, you're sleeping on the ground, you're eating there, all that dust, and that's where, like, I obviously had ingested some of this stuff over a period of time, and we'd go there. Sometimes it would be, for a couple of days, sometimes it would be 4 or 5 days, wherever they wanted, until we just got too antsy, because it was kind of like, being away from home, so to speak, because our fire base was home, So we do that. There was another time right at the end of my time there, when my ETS was up, my enlisted time served, and I was supposed to be coming home. I had one sergeant that really didn't like me. He was a sergeant I had from the States. Of course, I don't think he liked anybody. Nobody liked him. And I had, my discharge was supposed to be on the 18th of February, so usually 10 days or so before they start out processing, you're doing all the paperwork. So it was about 10 days before, they said, okay, there's a crew, we got to go out. We're going to be airlifted to this place, they called it the Triangle. And it'll be for, 2 to 5 days. So I'm doing all the arithmetic. I said, well, hell, that's cutting into my time. They said, it's tough, you're going to go. And I said, if I don't go, well, then blah, blah, whatever, So I figured, well, hell, I might as well go if it's for 2 days, So 5 days would be really cutting it short. So I went. So we went in these Chinooks, it's big. We had to go to the trucks. This deuce and a half's hauled us to this landing strip there where the Chinooks were at. Those are the big helicopters with the 2 props. They could carry a lot of weight. They could even carry our howitzers. But the Triangle, where we were going to, the howitzers were already there. So we had to pick up ammo and sea rations, body bags, stuff like that you have to take. So they airlifted us out there. And so it was just starting to rain. We got there, and of course there was a crew already there. So we relieved them because that's the way it operated. They would be relieved, and we had communications set up. So, that everybody left. We got settled down, and there were bunkers there, but a lot of them were built into the side of the hill, almost like tunnels. It was actually pretty good. But then it started to rain, and then at the same time, we started getting a lot of incoming rounds and mortars coming in, where we started getting casualties. I said, holy smokes, So we had 2 lieutenants, and we had a couple of sergeants. We had, I think, 3 sergeants because there were 3 guns on this Triangle. Well, lo and behold, before you know it, both the lieutenants are killed. Got killed from shrapnel. So we had, then the body bags. I said, God, no wonder we got these body bags. And we had some people that were injured. We had medics. So then some of the sergeants, people were getting scared because here it's raining, it's all wet, and and this Triangle was a funny spot. There was the Triangle was a valley, and there was these rivers came down, and 2 rivers came down, and then it went into one river, and there was these big hills, or basically jungle hills, and we were had a good viewpoint of everything, and evidently there was movement the ARVN soldiers were down there, and evidently there were the NLF, they called it, the National Liberation Front, was coming in. So we were to provide cover for the ARVN army, but meanwhile the NLF, or the North Vietnamese, were peppering us and picking us off like flies. So the one sergeant in this crew I was on, he just had a breakdown, and people were freaking out. So because it was heard that they're coming up the hill. So meanwhile it's raining like hell, and we had radio contact. So we told them we were in a bad situation. We needed some backup, some helicopters. But they couldn't send any helicopters out. So again, your adrenaline's running. So my gun crew, the sergeant, just started crying and having a breakdown. So I took over on the crew, you know. And we didn't have anybody to call in any numbers for us. So I took some chances because we heard they were trying to infiltrate coming up the hill. I took a chance, and I just, instead of putting the fuse and the projectile in the chamber, I just put in with the charge, all the black powder charge, and then we lowered the barrel to where it was going downhill, and pulled the lanyard, and all this fire came out, went down the mountain, you know. So that pretty much stopped that onslaught at that time. And then, of course, I found out later on that could ruin some of the equipment, that excess heat being exposed in the barrel, about warping the barrel. I said, I didn't give a damn, man. I said, you know, I wanted to go home. I wanted to get the hell out of here, you know. So we had, I think that we had 35 guys went out there, and 23, and I was one of the 23, were unscathed, you know. We came out all right, but we had wounded. We lost 3 or 4 guys, I think 4 guys. But what had happened, we lost communications also. And it was set up, I guess they had, because you couldn't string any wire, so it was all, we had like these, at that time, pretty modern devices. We could communicate down with the Arvins and the forward observers that were with the Arvin, and he'd keep us posted what was going on, but we couldn't communicate really out anymore. So we couldn't get any help to come to us. And finally, the weather slowed down, and we were just shooting at random, just to let the North Vietnamese know that we were still alive. But I felt pretty good about firing all that powder, you know, do something different, you know. So I don't know if it ever went down into the anvils of, you know, artillery history. But so finally they came, the rain finally stopped, and they couldn't come in when it's raining because of those little hills that were there. The clouds would get in, and some of the clouds were almost all the way down to the ground, but it worked in our favor too, because in the NLF couldn't really move around that much either. You know, and they were trying to, I guess they scoped everything out during the day when they tried to come up the hill, but then they were coming up when it was dark. Well, I'll never forget, I didn't know what to expect when we fired just nothing but 7 bags of black powder. But I pat myself in the back, you know, I took that chance, and it worked because things quieted down pretty quick after that, you know. People say, Miles, what the hell did you do, man, you know? What I did, you know. I said, it's a secret, you know. They knew what I did, you know. So then finally, you know, we had the Chinooks came in with our replacements, and of course, you know, we had lost some people, you know, which was pretty sad, you know.
Were some of them your friends?
No, you know, not really. I mean, the lieutenants they were all right, you know. One guy, the one friend that I lost, he was a forward observer. He was a lieutenant. And God, it's so sad, you know. He was a good guy. He was with us in the States. And what happened, you know, he was an ROTC, and then he got all his training, and he didn't like hanging out with officers. So at evenings, we'd go downtown to the bars downtown, and we had a bar. It was called the Vapors Lounge there in Lawton, Oklahoma. And that was kind of like our bar, you know, 2nd Battalion, 13th Artillery, A Battery. We had a big thing up on the wall. So he would come down there and drink beer with us, you know. And he was a regular guy, and his name was Boyle. Last name was Boyle, Lieutenant Boyle. Like, he was from Massachusetts. And he was a good guy. Well, you know, he was a forward observer. He was one of these guys. And I went out with him one time when we went out with the infantry, you know, and saw how he operated with all this slide rule type stuff and calling in coordinates and shooting. And I mean, sharp as a tack. Well, he was up in one of these little bubble helicopters, you know, that could see the Iroquois helicopter, I think they were called, and guiding, you know, artillery rounds in. And the Iroquois helicopter got shot down. But the thing that made it so tragic, he was supposed to get out like in January, and then he was getting married in May, I think. So he decided to extend for 3 months because he could use the extra money for when he got married. So what happens, he gets shut down. And I told him, I told him, you're stupid, man. You got to get out of here when you can. I need the money. I said, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you've seen it firsthand from that helicopter all the time. So he tried to talk to him. And I have a photo that was taken, I think there's 4 people in the photo, and 3 of them got killed there in that photo. And I used to think, was I bad luck? I took this photo, of course, before they were killed. But I had that photo, and I think one of them was Lieutenant Boyle, the other was Sergeant Bauer, and the other one was Sergeant Soto. The guys that I knew from the States, because, you get your replacements in. And it was funny, another story, that story's pretty much over. What it was, when we got back, by then, my processing should have started. They had to stay the whole 5 days. And I was not a happy camper, to say the least, because guys that were supposed to be getting out with me at that same time had already left, So I was like behind them. I eventually caught up with them, but that's another story. But then, what was I was going to transfer to something else about the guys, the replacements that were coming in. I went through basic training with a guy. His name was Dangerfield. And he was a good guy, big guy, And after basic training, I never saw him again. Well, we got, after I was in Vietnam, we got some replacements came. He was one of the replacements. I couldn't believe it. I saw him, he came in there with all his gear on when he soon got off the back of the truck. So he greeted some of the guys, and I said, Dangerfield, were you in Fort Polk, Lima Company? Yeah, Dangerfield, it's you, And then he vaguely remembered me. So then he right away took to me, So we got to talking, and as we're sitting there, and he's got all his combat gear. He just came to Vietnam. So I look on, you got two ammo pouches, which you carry a couple of clips for your rifle. And on the ammo pouch, I have 2 clips, kind of, you call them something, a snap thing, where you can snap grenades on there, and you put it around the neck of the grenade. So you have on your ammo pouch, I have 2 grenades on the outside and 2 grenades on the outside here. So we're sitting there talking, and I happen to look down, and he's got, the grenades have a pin on them, and it's like a cotter pin and a pin, and he's got these loops that secure the grenades to the pouch, the ammo pouch. He's got the loops around the pins. So every time you're moving, that grenade, the pin could gradually, it's like a cotter pin like that, and when you pull it, it's like lead, they're lead, I think, and it just bends and you pull it out, the handle falls off, you got 5 seconds before it explodes. So I told him, hey, Dangerfield, maybe we weren't sitting, I said, sit down, man, sit down, I want you to sit down. So he sat down, and I want to tell you something, I didn't have any of that gear on. He just got off the back of this truck, and he was assigned to the gun crew I was on. They're just how fortunate in a way. So I said, hey, sit down. So I sat him down. And I says, look at I said, you got a pretty good outfit there. You got on with all this web gear and all this stuff ready for battle. You got a first aid kit and, all this other stuff, So I tell him, something, but I want you to just relax here, but, you got your grenades on your ammo pouch, you got them on wrong. He said, what do you mean? I was just look at it, So he looked at it. I said, you got that loop that supposed to secure the grenade to your ammo pouch. You got it through the pin, the little circle thing you pull on, Man, he sat there and he turned white. He's a black guy. He turned white. He just got so pale. He almost passed out, So finally, he said, he was so shook up and all that stuff. He said, well, could could you take them apart for me? You don't have to do it, you know, could you take them off? So I took them off. There was really no danger, you know, because I don't know when he put them on there, but nobody checked them and nobody told him anything. So I got all 4 grenades off. So he was so thankful. So again, you know, I got a was a Christmas card or something from his mother again, saying how danger. And I wouldn't call him Dangerfield. I called him Rodney, like after Rodney Dangerfield, the comedian. I don't know if you ever heard of Rodney Dangerfield. So he didn't particularly like that. Hey, Rod, or Rodney, don't call me Rodney. Okay, Rod, you know. But anyway, so she sent me cookies and cakes and all kinds of stuff, you know. And he was from Texas also, like Mitchell was too, you know. He was from like Houston, Texas or something like that. So, but it was strange, you know. So I was a hero to some guys over there anyway, you know. And then, you know, it was something that happened. It was after I was out of the Army and was back here in Tucson. I got a call from some friends of mine who had served with me in the Army in the same outfit, and they were coming through town. They wanted to spend a couple of days. I was working at the mines then, so I talked to my foreman and I told him, look, I'm going to need a couple of days off. This is like a rare opportunity, and he gave me the time off. So they came back and they said that our unit received a presidential unit citation, but it was a Vietnamese thing. It was the Palm of Gallantry, but it was and a presidential unit citation for our action that 5 days we were out there when I pulled that fire thing. So it's something that I never knew about, but those things don't happen overnight. So they said, and these guys found out about it later on, because they had gotten out even then, because I think by that time, you know, Johnson was no longer the president, so I don't know who authorized it, but it's a pretty big thing to get a unit citation for something, because we had like on our flag of our battalion flag that we had all these streamers up on the top, and they were from like the Second World War, Korea, these presidential unit citations. And here there's one that was given for Vietnam because we did outstanding work or something, you know. So I thought, I wonder if it was my fire cannon I shot down the hill, because I think the our people, the Arvins, they had to see that shit too, you know. I was pretty impressed with it myself, to tell you the truth, you know, because all that fire that came at it, I couldn't believe it, man. It was like you see a dragon shooting out. I don't know if it ruined the gun or all after that, you know, because we had 2 other guns there too, you know. So obviously it didn't, because we did shoot rounds out of it. But yeah, that was. But yeah, some friends losing some friends, and then there were people that were killed after I left that some friends would write, because things got. I was fortunate because the war kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, you know.
And when did you get out?
I got out in February. I got there in September, got out in early September, got out in
What year?
66. So when the war went on, as the war went on, you know, like 1968 was a year that I think that year alone, I think 20,000 Americans were killed just in that calendar year alone, or some outrageous amount. I mean, don't, you know, hold me to that figure, but I know it was a high amount anyway. So, you know,
Did you join a lot of the protests in the U.S.?
No, not right away. No, because I was still, because all of what I saw, because I went over with no politics at all. I mean, I was kind of gung-ho in a way, because I think everybody, you always have this thing in the side you want to be in combat, you know, until it actually happens. So then you figure, okay, you know, I've had enough, I'm out of here, you know, because I mean, that's just the feeling that I had. But then when I saw all the things, the way we treated people, there were other things that we'd have to go there and pull a little security when they were going to burn this hamlet down. They'd go in there and we'd be off like on the sides. They'd be in there with these flamethrowers burning down these thatched huts. They'd be killing chickens and pigs and stuff like that that belonged to the people. And they have right near these villages and hamlets, they have like their cemetery where they have all these buildings or these statue things. And guys would desecrate those, try to throw grenades at them, try to blow them up. And I said, damn, and the people are crying and carrying on. I said, is this how we're going to win the war here? These are civilians, but supposedly they were warned because there was, mortar rounds coming out every night and rifle fire. And if this didn't end, we were going to do this. And they'd gotten all these warnings, and they were saying no, was the Viet Cong would come in and shoot from there, and we shouldn't pay the price. And then the helicopters would go over and drop all these leaflets in Spanish and Vietnamese about turning in your weapons and what happens if you don't, And so supposedly they were warned, and I didn't want to be a part of that. That was being the ugly American. And there were things that I found out afterwards that really frosted me too, long afterwards that I became more involved. But when I got out, I was kind of troubled. So that's when I got the job at the mines operating. I hired on as a truck driver, heavy equipment operator. And you're there pretty much by yourself. I mean, you have a carpool, you go to work, or you hook up with a bunch of guys and you share rides. You're going out there, then you get out to the change area, the parking lot, and then they put you on a bus and take you. There's an open pit mine. You go out there and then you work for 8 hours and you go back, shower, and then go home. So I pretty much kept to myself, and once a month I got 4 days off. So I had a nice four-wheel drive. I had a 61 Chevy, pickup truck, four-wheel drive. And Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock when I got off, I didn't ride with my carpool. I took my truck and all my gear and I went and camped out, for like 4 days. I didn't have to be back to work until, midnight on Tuesday. So I went out there, and you can really reflect. It's really the outdoors and being by yourself. It's so quiet. And actually it turned out it really wasn't all that quiet, because I found out, I developed a tinnitus, the ringing in your ears, and when you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're very aware of it. Like right now, I have it, but I'm really not aware of it. I get a disability from that also, and that's probably, in the artillery, the rounds going off, and they gave us earplugs, and we never wore them, so you'd have the little thing you'd have on your fatigues. They were in a little packaging. The reason I didn't wear it, because I could put it in one ear hole, but the other one was too small and out of this ear hole, and it would fall out all the time. So I didn't use any at all. So I'd go out there and reflect, and then, then I would talking to different people, and I could see, I'd watch the news, see what was going on with the news, and things kept getting worse and worse. And I thought, man, I'm pretty fortunate here, and that. So then I really didn't get involved, and my politics were kind of changing, because I'm dealing with it. I'm more social with my workers out there at the mines. I started learning, a bottom dump truck, end dump truck, scraper, dual D9 dozer, water truck and rubber tire dozer, learning all these different equipment, different jobs, So it was always a challenge out there, and it wasn't hard work. It could be dangerous sometime when you're dumping this stuff out in we built all these big dikes out there. Sometimes you get too close to the edge and you start sliding off. So, but other than that, it was no other danger, and you're sitting there and you just have to operate and be aware, It's the first time I ever started using seat belts, because all our equipment had seat belts. So this is back in the late 60s, So it wasn't until I finally decided to go. I had the GI Bill. So I went to the U of A. It was in 1970. So it was, so that's where the movement was really going on big. And I took a freshman composition course. So I'd been out of high school for 10 years. So I had to take the battery of tests before I could get accepted into the U of A. So I scored, just borderline passing on the math and borderline passing on the English. So they told me, they recommended I take English X rather than freshman composition. And also they recommended intermediate algebra instead of algebra. So I took intermediate algebra, but I wasn't going to take English X because it was for no credit. Because I'd say the limit was 69, I got like 71, whatever the numbers were, So I just was over the top. So I took freshman composition, and I thoroughly enjoyed the class, because it was a TA who taught the class, a young woman, and various ways of writing, how you can do spatial or chronological, and I learned this writing. Well, one of the tests was, they give you photos, and you're supposed to write an essay on these photos. Or one of them was a photo of this ROTC guy on campus that he was doing something, or his wife was pinning an award on him. He was in uniform and all that stuff. So I figured, well, I'm going to write this. I'm going to write that, he received some award for bravery. And then I started going into the whole rant, basically. And all of a sudden I realized, I'm against this damn war. I've been against it, all this crap that I've seen going on, that I'm against this. And I wrote this, and the TA was so excited about it when she saw that. And she invited me to go to an anti-war rally. And I went out there, and it's back during the time, all the hippies and all that stuff. And at first I felt a little uncomfortable.
How interesting that Jon didn't know he was against the war until he wrote an essay for a college exam. Such is the writing process, as many therapists have people write down their thoughts and feelings so that they can process them. The next episode transitions into Jon's next phase in life. He continues fighting, but this time without an M14 rifle. He uses tactics taught by Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi.